If you like what we do here at Full Fat Videos and you'd like to ask us questions directly, suggest new video topics, or hear our thoughts on the latest pop culture info nuggets, you can follow us on Twitter at Full Fat Videos. Spoilers for Marvel's Avengers, but nothing you'll particularly care to have spoiled or couldn't have guessed, you know? If you had told my past self that in 2020 I'd get to play a fun, fast-paced Avengers game where I could play as all my favourite characters with my mates and battle loads of infamous Marvel villains, I'd say, what? That Square Enix Avengers game is actually going to be good? You would have told me, no. You're going to have a blast playing Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 whilst the UK is in lockdown. At which point I'd have probably said, the UK is going into lockdown and you'd have to teleport out of there before I asked too many pressing questions. Anyway, back in lockdown, my flatmates and I played Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 night after night when every day looked the same and you couldn't go anywhere. We hadn't really played a cooperative experience together in ages, and you know what? It was a lot of fun. The game kept chucking characters at you so quickly that by the time you tried one, you're already desperate to try the next. There's loads of flashy visuals on screen and it can get cluttered at times, but really, that was part of the fun. Plus, who can scoff at couch co-op? Proper 4-player couch antics. We got to be the Fantastic Four for crying out loud. You see, Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 wasn't trying to be a cinematic experience, it was trying to be a game. It had plenty of unlockable heroes, plenty of boss battles, tons of interesting environments from the Marvel Universe, no matter how weird and wonderful they were. I never had to stomp around the same AIM laboratories, smashing the same computers and destroying the same cookie-cutter robots. Which brings me back to this laboured mess of a game, Marvel's Avengers. I haven't done a lot of Marvel videos this year because I've not really been in the mood. Usually an MCU outing will get me into that Marvel mindset, but there's been none of those for obvious reasons. And besides, the end of the Infinity Saga really put a full stop on proceedings. I needed something to get me back in, and I really wanted this game to be that. Unfortunately, Marvel's Avengers is just a bit of a shame, really. I feel like it was made with some love from a development perspective, but lots of corporate, live service decisions have hobbled it somewhat. There's no denying I had fun in places, and for the most part it captures the spirit of the characters, but it's consistently held back by repetitive and shallow gameplay. I guess first off I should talk about the story that drives this game. I say drives, but that's a bit of a misnomer because there isn't much at all driving Marvel's Avengers on the whole. Basically, the Avengers bear the brunt of a screw-up that sees thousands of people killed, including their near and dear star-spangled man with a plan, Mr. Steve Rogers. He's dead. He's definitely dead, guys. He's not coming back. Yeah? Our route into the story is that of Avengers fangirl Kamala Khan. She gets exposed to the Terrigen Mists and becomes an Inhuman with Miss Fantastic stretchy powers, but she can also go big like Ant-Man, so there's that. Now, I think Kamala is a decent character, she's charming and it makes sense to have a new character join the fray and learn the ropes whilst galvanising the morose former members of the team. She's got a diverse power set that means she can stand toe-to-toe with more powerful enemies, and there's plenty to play with there. But I just really wish they didn't egg on the fangirl stuff so much. At best it's pretty cringy, at worst it's like she's a walking advertisement for the game you've already bought.
Oh, could you imagine? And the winner for best fan fiction ever is Avengers versus the Evil Sewer Lizards by Kamala Khan, and the crowd goes wild.
I just feel like this kind of in-universe marketing and popularity doesn't work in a post-The Boys world. Now that the comic book turned show has found a larger mainstream audience and reminded us of the greedy corporate machinations that could come with superheroing big business, it seems like a tone-deaf step back to have Kamala running around collecting comic books at an Avengers convention and gushing about how great they all are whilst having all their products strewn across her room. Feels like I'm plugging The Boys here because I recently made some video essays for Prime Video, but I legitimately feel that way about the show and its impact upon other contemporary superhero media. It's hard to peddle this stuff when I've seen what Vault International gets up to, you know? And this Avengers game doesn't raise any interesting questions or ideas in the same way. I know it's a game, but if the industry is going to consistently peddle a cinematic experience and narrative, then it better measure up to the competition, you know? Anyway, it's cool that the story takes place in a time where the villains, in this case AIM, have won and the Avengers have disbanded and given up the capes. But it doesn't take this idea and run with it enough, nor are we given enough context to care about the state of this horrifying new world, where robots dog the public at supposedly every turn.
In accordance with Inhuman Protocol Section 3, Subsection 8-2, please remain still while we complete our scan.
What? There's one here?
You never spend much time in cities or populated areas to really see how much of an effect AIM has had on society. There's constant references to a resistance, but it's hardly Judgment Day, is it? Plus this game decides to centre its entire narrative around Inhumans.
Don't you get it? We're Inhuman. No one cares about us.
You'd be right! The Inhumans are discount mutants, we all know that. It's weird to have a story centered around Inhumans without having the actual Inhumans team showing up, nor is it really a story that is more interesting than the persecution narrative of mutants in the X-Men side of the Marvel Universe. Plus, the way the Inhumans factor into the story is just dumb. The bad guys are experimenting on them so that they can extract their powers and put them in their robots or something. It's clunky and doesn't make much sense. And not to bring up The Boys again, but it deals with the same themes of media bias and public perception that this game oh so lightly touches upon. There's this reporter from the Daily Bugle who slanders the Avengers every chance he gets, and then in the end he sees AIM attacking the public and he just can't believe what is happening. The team don't have to deal with the plight of news outlets peddling AIM as a force for good, or the idea that you can walk onto their front lawn and battle them the livelong day, but if they have the hearts and minds of the public, AIM can continue to rear their ugly head. Nah, none of that would be interesting. Instead they just smash the robots until you get to fight a big robot, and then it's over, I guess? Where the story actually excels is how it nails the characters. Troy Baker's Bruce Banner has a sweet mentor relationship to Kamala that highlights his kind-hearted nature. Nolan North's Tony Stark is just the right amount of douchebag to make you love him, and I'm surprised to say he manages to make the character his own. He's less pop culture reference heavy than Downey's iteration, and instead relies more on dry, snide remarks.
It was.
Hey, back off!
Hi, I'm sorry. Who are you?
Plus, the conflict between Bruce and Tony is the highlight of the game, and the best writing can be found here.
I deserve.
Yeah, you're damn right you deserved it. Do the Avengers pose a danger to society? That was the question, Bruce. That was the question.
Did you even check the science? Did you check
It was a
the
heist,
science?
Bruce.
No.
We were outsmarted.
The Terrigen reactor was unstable, and you knew that, and you still paraded it before the entire world.
So what? We just give up?
We didn't give up, Tony. We failed. At least I can admit that.
There's no punching for a bit based on a misunderstanding like most hero v hero fare. Here these guys are harbouring a lot of guilt for the events of A-Day and taking snipes at each other. After several years of audiences being familiar with them as the best spud science bros, it's nice to see them butt heads a little bit more like in the comics. On that note, I've seen a few reactions berate the game for its similarities to the MCU and its design choices, and look, I get it, but at the same time there's no way in hell the developers would have been allowed to adopt a completely unique look when the last Avengers movie is literally the highest grossing film of all time at the moment, and they lean on it well in places. I love that we get to use Tony's Star Boost armour, clearly evocative of the spacesuit armour in Iron Man 3, and how some of the moves clearly correlate to things that have happened in the MCU, moves that the characters have, performed. It's cool because when you pull those moves off, you feel like the characters that you love. Plus it does well to keep the story mostly earthbound, avoiding all that cosmic Infinity Stone jazz, although because of this it sometimes feels like it should have been made in the 2012-2015 Joss Whedon era, which hasn't particularly aged well.
Why'd you smash the reactor, Cap? A lot of people died.
The mystery surrounding Cap's quote-unquote death is interesting. He appears to smash the Terrigen crystals, killing all the people on A-Day, and the Avengers naturally call his actions into question, and since he's not around to answer those questions, seeds of doubt are sown. Cap having the moral conundrum surrounding his actions on A-Day, of potentially killing all those people with his decision, that carries weight.
I don't know. Ned, I just keep thinking, if I hadn't, all those people...
No. This is not your fault. That ship was never supposed to be in the air. I would have done the same thing.
What's less surprising are things like, who is the mysterious hacker, Tiny Dancer? Ooh, hacker, dancer, Tiny? It's Black Widow, isn't it? Seems like they just did it so that Tony could make a Rocket Man joke twice.
I would have gone with Rocket Man. So Tiny Dancer, huh?
Let me guess, you would have gone with Rocket Man.
Please. Not even close.
The writing for the main cutscenes is pretty good, the dialogue holds up well, but less so in the actual gameplay. There's loads of clunky dialogue and cringe to be found there.
Doesn't he know you can't spell inhuman without the human part?
And that's how the giant brain genius got schooled by a teenager.
The opening scene where you play the classic walking cutscene, everything is rosy whilst we meet the principal characters until shit hits the fan, implies that the game will be far more story driven than it turns out to be. Kamala's father, Yusuf, is warm and likeable, and it seems to set him up as a principal character, but he's quickly dropped and only reappears at the very end. The amount of fun you can have in this game is directly proportional to how well realised each Avenger is, and to what degree each character just makes your life easier. Some make the game less tedious, which is always a plus. For example, the wide open areas are great for characters like Thor and Iron Man because they can of course fly, but when you're playing as Cap or even the Hulk, it can become a chore to get from one side of New York to the other. There's a variety of platform and jumping boosts dotted around the map to make sure you can reach everything, but what's the point? I'd pick Cap because he was the most fun to brawl with, but I'd curse myself whenever I had to start double jumping to a bullshit objective when I could have just done the same thing as Iron Man by holding X. Job done. In order of best to worst characters in the game in terms of my personal enjoyment, I'd go Iron Man and Thor joint first. These guys both have the widest array of abilities whilst also having a satisfying amount of oomph to their attacks. You can fly, you can shoot projectiles, there's good close quarters melee moves. It's fun to kick ass with them and it's fun to traverse in equal measure. With Stark you can end up swapping between repulsors, missiles and lasers, and I enjoyed using all of them, plus you can hop into the Hulkbuster, which is hilariously overpowered and probably would have bothered me if it had been in a game I gave more of a shit about. If you put a gun to my head I'd probably put Thor just ahead of old Metalhead, if only because I never tire of hearing the satisfying donk that comes from hitting goons in the face with his hammer. After that I'd probably play Cap. His combat mechanics feel the most intuitive and you can pull off some really satisfying moves. It's really just that lack of good traversal mechanics that hold him back. Then after that I'd say Miss Marvel, but maybe I'm biased because I've always had a soft spot for stretchy powers. I enjoyed zipping around with her and you can literally mash a giant hand into people's faces. Black Widow finds herself towards the lower end of this list, but I must say I was consistently surprised of how fun she could be. I liked using her guns, and the invisibility power-up gave her something unique to play with. It's the kind of idea that reinforces her spy roots, and honestly I wish we had seen more of this sort of thing in the movies to better differentiate her skill set. The same goes for the grappling hook, which can be used to fling yourself into enemies as well as to get up to out of reach ledges. It's a poor man's Arkham grapple, but it works. Could you not have given Rogers the same grapple mechanic for climbing? It's not like there isn't precedent for it, and it makes sense in a video game to give him better access. Cap is my boy, okay? And I can tell you for a fact I wouldn't have minded him getting something like that, even if he's not all that commonly associated with a grappling hook. But the character who is flat out boring as is almost definitely the Hulk, and that's for one solid reason: he's so fucking slow. He arduously swings his fists around like he can barely be bothered to participate, and practically moves around on all fours at times. I get he's a bigger character, but the Hulk's speed is a huge part of his character, as well as his ability to jump incredible distances. I get you have to make certain characters faster, slower, weaker, stronger. You have to give them abilities that complement each other, all that good video game balancy stuff, but the Hulk in this game is just a lumbering waste of space. I don't feel like Square nailed the feeling of being the Hulk whatsoever. Every time I had to take control of him, I wish I was playing Hulk Ultimate Destruction on the PS2 all the way back in 2005. A game from 15 years ago on a technically inferior console captured the power and ferocity of the Hulk better than Square's Avengers ever does. At a base level, you can have fun with everyone, but once you've tasted flight and flinging a hammer halfway across a room, there's really nothing like it. I'm not sure what else is here to keep me. There's tons of cosmetics to unlock, but Iron Man is the only one that I'd really like to do that for, because he's actually got an extensive and cool array of armour designs. The others mostly have booky alternatives that just don't get me hot under the collar, you know? Maybe if you'd locked out the Cap Agent outfit I would have been jonesing, but you get that automatically. Your mistake, Square. This Cap fanboy might have caved for that one. I'd also like to point out that this game is broken as hell. On the first day of playing the thing, merely 3 hours in, the camera got stuck around the war table and I couldn't figure out if I'd done something wrong or if the game had just tripped up. I turned the console on and off, and subsequently every single time I went to boot up the game, it couldn't make it past the first loading screen. The first loading screen. Not even a loading screen in game, just the loading screen to get to the main menu. It's so broken it's quite literally unplayable. So I uninstall the thing and I waste time reinstalling it when I should be playing more of the game for this very video to make sure it comes out on time, you know. I boot it up, thankfully all is well. Well, except for the fact that the game then needs to wait around a little bit longer so I can actually get back to my save file. I play it for another few hours the next day, and guess what? It did it again, didn't it? Except this time it straight up told me to delete the game and reinstall. So all in all, yeah, I wasted a bunch of hours sitting around for this thing just so I could be forced to play as a Hulk that can barely clear a small ledge. And it really just sums up the cynical corporate cash grab that is Marvel's Avengers. Don't worry about polishing the game, ship it broken and we'll patch it later in time for the Christmas sales. Those dickheads won't mind it being an absolutely buggy mess, because we'll shove Spider-Man and 2 different Hawkeyes down their throats at a later date. All will be forgiven. Oh, sorry, that was footage from the show Lazy Town, must be a mistake, but, you know what, I'll just release this video anyway, I can patch it later, right? It's good enough for Square, so f*** it. Story-driven missions always feel more bespoke and involving and fun, not to mention the environments are always more interesting. The clearly repurposed multiplayer missions put into the campaign are just boring half the time. In the bespoke story missions you get to see cool environments like an Adaptoid factory as Black Widow, or flying up into space as Tony. Even the final level has some cool flashy visuals. It's much preferred to diving into an AIM laboratory for the 100th time. I find myself pressing the up button to be shown where to go because anything in between the big set piece action can get so tedious. At some point I just started coasting through, you know. Why were no lessons learned from the absolutely incredible Batman Arkham series, which was story driven and tailored to gameplay that made you look and feel and act like the Dark Knight? The first game came out over 10 years ago and it's still taking the superhero action game genre to school, to be honest. The boss battles are actually pretty fun. I really enjoyed coming to blows with the Abomination, and it made me realise once again how much fun a Hulk solo movie could be if he actually got to fight the members of his Monsters Rogues gallery. He's barely a presence in the campaign, which is such another shame because he's awesome and he has been severely underused since 2008. But the one that actually impressed me the most was oddly the fight against the gigantic AIM warbot. Usually in games I groan whenever you're forced to face a giant enemy because half the time all it boils down to is a quick time event, but in this fight you maintained full control the entire time. It was great flying around as Iron Man, weakening the beast slowly but surely, targeting specific areas and whatnot. It was nothing groundbreaking, but it made me feel like a superhero taking on a larger than life threat. I wish there had been more of this kind of stuff in the campaign. Usually you're just fighting the same robots over and over again and it's boring after a while. Directly after that, Thor returns, and it's a pretty great entrance. Then suddenly you're smashing up robots on top of a moving helicarrier and just narrowly avoiding destroying New York. The 1-2 punch of the Warbot Thor helicarrier sequence made me want to keep playing, and then not long after that you get to go to space in a dope monochrome astronaut Iron Man armour. These levels were actually getting quite exciting, and I felt like finally, with every member of the core cast reassembled, we would be in for something a little deeper and more engrossing. But nope, within about 2 missions you're at the finale fighting MODOK. You beat up MODOK a couple of times and that's it? What? That's it? I mean, no, that's not quite it. There's some side missions and all that to do, but it all feels a bit redundant when the preeminent threat in the game is extinguished. Look, I'm not saying I didn't have fun with the finale when all the Avengers were finally assembled, but it needed way more of it to satisfy me. It's like if Batman Arkham City had half the in-depth story-driven levels it has, and in between them you just have to do like the challenge rooms over and over again to level up. You still get all the awesome Batmaning, but it would become a bit tedious if there was nothing driving half the things you're doing. Even the subtitles are lazy. For some reason the subtitles describe what the characters are doing in between dialogue. Why the hell would you want that? I was trying to work out if it was an accessibility thing, but if you can't see the screen very well, how are tiny words at the bottom of the screen going to enhance the experience? I can't work it out. Who okayed this? Even the credits are lazy. Why are they repeating the jobs? Why wouldn't you just put artists and then list all the artists like, you know, normal credits? Oh, and by the way, I'm recording this conclusion after I worked on the initial portion of the video. Since then, guess what? It crashed again, 3 times in a week. Now the single player campaign won't load up at all. I reinstalled it and that currently still hasn't fixed it, so there's a good chance you're watching this video right now and I'm still unable to play any more of Marvel's Avengers. I think Marvel's Avengers just kind of speaks to my feelings about games in this era. The last console generation was such a blast. I wore out my PS3 playing so many awesome single-player focused immersive games. It felt like there was always something to play, and even licensed titles like the Batman games offered top-tier gaming experiences. Now after years of waiting for an Avengers game to drop, this is what we got. A game that offers up, at best, some short, shallow fun, wrapped up in a competently written story mode that understands the characters. At worst, it's a money-grabbing, soulless, repetitive, buggy, uninspired mess that crashes far more times than it's ever worth. The only people in my life who would really jones to play Marvel's Avengers are people that I already live with, so there's no way I can do proper online co-op. Maybe this would have been a blast if I could play with my friends in our living room, but as it stands, all we can do is pass the controller around. Lame. What happened to games, man? There's no way you could have made this sort of bullshit experience on the PS2. And you know what the worst part is? They're going to get away with this. months from now, more characters will be dropped into the game, there'll be a new mode that everyone gets hyped up for, probably some new tweaks and balancing updates. Somewhere like IGN will release a preview saying how far along the game has come and how it's a quantum leap from what we got at launch. People will forget. Companies will once again see that they can ship games broken and patch them up later if they have to. And I don't blame you, because I know I'll be right there itching to try out Black Panther and Doctor Strange. Of course I will. But they can't keep getting away with it. They can't keep getting away with it. Okay, so we have not one, not two, not three. No, three, sorry. We have 3 video essays on The Boys for you. There's only one catch. You can't find any of them on Full Fat Videos. We've collaborated with Amazon Prime Video to create 3 bespoke essays on key members of the 7. Homelander, Starlight, and the A-Train, baby!
A-Train, baby!
We got asked to do this a little while ago now, and we've been very excited to get these out, and yeah, I hope you really enjoy them. The first video is all about the many masks of Homelander, how his performative nature is dictated by his relationships to Stillwell, to the Seven, to his fictional parents, and then to humanity. We dig into the series to try and uncover the person he really is, breaking down all the ways the Star-Spangled Hero differs from the characters he pastiches, predominantly Superman. And we touch upon everything from Tarantino to Marv Wolfman to Injustice. Starlight, the myth of the superhero, is all about how, in a cynical world such as The Boys, the defender of Des Moines goes against the grain. Through January, we explore the commercial nature of the superhero game and why she could become the show's key player in the fight against Vought. Like the good captain, Annie January's perspective and morality is challenged by an ever-changing world, and it is her resistance and will that keeps her a true hero. A-Train and the pitfalls of the celebrity athlete is all about the pitfalls of the celebrity athlete. In a world of other speedsters, you can never be the world's fastest man for long, and in this video we explore how the character is much more in line with that of a professional athlete than a superhero, and how that obsession for success is slowly but surely destroying his life. I hope you enjoy them, and I would really appreciate if you left a comment on the videos, left a like and all that jazz, only if you enjoy them of course. It would be great to cover the rest of the 7 and maybe even The Boys at some point, but I imagine that would be dependent on how these videos do. We couldn't have been happier to get asked, and to be honest, it's been really enjoyable. Chris and I both genuinely enjoy the show, so getting the chance to talk about it was a joy. And just before I go, I would like to say thank you. Thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and allowing us to have the opportunity to make these videos. We very much couldn't get anywhere without an audience.
You guys. You are the real heroes.
Thank you for watching another Full Fat video. Don't forget to click that subscribe button and hit the bell if you'd like to see more breakdowns of movies, TV, and more. A big thank you to our Full Fat tier patrons, Dr. Chike, Jax Merrick, and Mike Nandu. You the boys. Until next time, keep it full fat.